What's up, everybody? Today we are going to be looking at the 5 teams that have the worst future moving forward in the entire NFL. If you're a fan of one of these teams, you may want to buckle up, hop onto a bandwagon because it may be a rough next few years. The main criteria that I look for when evaluating if a team has a good future is number 1, do they have a franchise quarterback? Number 2, do they have a head coach that's established and proven that they can win and establish a good culture within the organization? Do they have their own draft picks? Do they have cap space? And what does the roster look like right now as far as talent goes and as far as age goes, and how does it look for the future as well? Let's dive into number 5 here, which is the Las Vegas Raiders. This is a rough spot for the Raiders to be in right now. They're reportedly looking to trade Derek Carr. It's kind of debatable whether he was a franchise-level quarterback anyway, whether he could get you to a Super Bowl and win it for you, but it looks like they're moving on from him anyway. So right now, they do not have a franchise quarterback for the future on their roster right now. That's not a great start. They also have Josh McDaniels as the head coach, who has done a terrible job, in my opinion. I really don't think that he should be the coach next year, but it doesn't sound like they have the cash to be able to fire him and hire another head coach since they're still paying Gruden. It's not great for this Raiders team where you don't have a quarterback, you don't have a head coach. They do have their picks, and you may get some extra picks for Derek Carr, so that's good because you can add to the offensive line. You can draft a new franchise quarterback. You can help out that defense that still needs a lot of pieces. They do also have the 9th most cap space in the NFL for 2023, and even more of that will clear up after Derek Carr is traded. So they do have cash. They do have picks, which is good because right now they don't have a franchise quarterback. They don't have a head coach, and I do think that there is a severe lack of talent on this roster right now. You've got Max Crosby and Nate Hobbs on defense, but that's about it. This offensive line is dreadful. The weapons are nice, and you've got Josh Jacobs there as well, but right now the defense, the offensive line needs some serious help. Luckily, they do have the cash and picks to do it, but not a great situation to be in for the Raiders there. At number 4, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on this list. This is under the assumption that Tom Brady leaves, which I really do think is the case. Even if he doesn't leave, you're only probably getting 1 to 2 more years of Tom Brady, and I don't think that's going to be the case anyway. I think he's going to be leaving in free agency, so that means you don't have a franchise-level quarterback on your team. I also think Todd Bowles, much like Josh McDaniels, is in over his head right now. He doesn't look like he's a very good game manager. He's not aggressive when he needs to be aggressive, and I just think that there's a lot of problems with the coaching staff right now. I don't think it was as smooth of a transition as they were hoping for, moving from Arians to Bowles by any means. The roster talent on the Buccaneers is actually pretty good. This team won the Super Bowl with the same core group of players just a few years ago, so it's certainly not a terrible roster by any means, but they've just been ravaged by injuries this year, and you've got some upcoming free agents, most notably Tom Brady, but you've also got Levante David, Jamel Dean coming up as well. So definitely going to have some issues re-signing all of them since they have the second least amount of cap space in the entire NFL for 2023. Right now, they sit at negative $43.1 million over the cap. And that means that, that's without Tom Brady on there. And that's without David and Jamel Dean. So they're going to have to make some serious decisions about, who they're going to keep around and who's going to be worth it to really kind of restructure that cap and get back under it. They also do have the oldest roster in the entire NFL with an average age of 28. That just means that, they may not be built for the future as much. They're built to win now. And right now, I don't think that, they're one of the best teams in the NFL. So for the future, I think that really isn't a great sign as well. They do have pretty much all of their own draft picks moving forward, which is good. You certainly, don't have the extra capital, but you haven't traded away a lot of your picks like some of these teams that we'll talk about higher up the list here. At number 3, we have the Denver Broncos. Right now, Russell Wilson is being paid like a franchise quarterback. He is expected to be a franchise quarterback, but he's not playing like a franchise quarterback. He was one of the worst QBs in the entire NFL during this season. I mean, really, really bad. And, he had a great defense around him, and he had solid weapons. Now, Nathaniel Hackett is gone. They're going to get a new head coach in there, but I am worried about the quality of candidate that they're going to be able to get. There's rumors that they could trade for Sean Payton, but that's even more draft assets that they're going to have to get up to do that. So I wouldn't hate that, but I do think that you're going to have to probably either sacrifice a good coach, good picks, or Russell Wilson. And right now you can't really move on from Russell Wilson because of that albatross of a contract. So you're really just trying to get a coach that can fix him, basically, more than anything. But they have an average amount of cap space. They have the 18th most cap in the NFL. Not really fantastic or terrible there. So that doesn't really push them one way or the other. They do have a significant lack of draft capital right now. They do not have their own pick, which would have been a top 5 selection, which obviously if you're picking in the top 5, you could use a player of that caliber. They did trade Bradley Chubb for what was the 49ers pick, so they will be selecting wherever the 49ers end up. They don't have their own second rounder this year, so just a little bit of a lack of draft capital, and Sean Payton's supposedly going to cost a first and more. So if they have to trade, that 49ers pick and another pick, they're really going to be devoid of draft picks and really able to add a lot of young talent to this roster. At number 2, we have the Super Bowl champions from last year, the LA Rams. You have Matthew Stafford on the roster, but I wouldn't be at all surprised to see him retire this year. He's been injured a lot, and he won his Super Bowl. I think he finally got that success, and now if you're injured all the time and you're not really playing your best football, it might be time to retire. I could see him coming back for another season, but the biggest part of all of this is I don't know that Sean McVay is going to be back either. Sean McVay is awesome, but the reports of him leaving once the core kind of leaves is very prominent. Another report just came out today that, says that basically he's considering retiring once again. He was considering that last year. He's dealing with burnout. So, he's got a nice cushy announcer gig coming up that he has pretty much already been guaranteed. I wouldn't be at all surprised to see him move towards that and not be the Rams coach next year. If he leaves, I think Stafford leaves. I think Aaron Donald retires. I think Cooper Kupp and Jalen Ramsey could force their way out of LA because nobody wants to play on a team that's, completely blowing everything up. And not to mention, they have very little draft capital. They traded their first-round pick for Matthew Stafford. The Lions own it this year. That's going to be a very high selection as well. They also tried to trade away 2 first-round picks for Brian Burns. Thankfully for them, the Panthers did not accept that because that would have put them at number 1 on this list. But luckily, they do still have some of their draft picks. Right now, they have the 23rd most cap space in the NFL. They sit at negative $3.1 million for next year. Obviously, some of these people retiring or getting traded away could certainly help that, but you're really lacking depth because of how the Rams have built their model here for a Super Bowl win. Is they really wanted star players. That's how they were able to really push themselves into the Super Bowl. They were able to stay healthy. When those players don't stay healthy, we see what happens, and we can see that this year. But I really think they lack a lot of depth on that roster. I think if their star talent leaves, they're going to be in a really bad place moving forward. Before we get to number 1, I'm going to go through an honorable mention here. The Tennessee Titans are a team that I debated having on this list. I love Mike Vrabel as a head coach, but I do not think that their quarterback of the future is on the roster right now. They seemingly do not believe in Malik Willis at all. Ryan Tannehill is probably going to be gone after this upcoming season when his contract expires. So I just don't think that they have a quarterback of the future on the roster there. They have some issues as far as cap space as well. They're at negative $17.3 million, and they have the 7th oldest roster in the NFL. Just doesn't really seem like a team well built for the future right now. You do have your own picks, which is a good thing, and the roster has some talent, especially on the defensive side of the ball. But there are some major issues that are really starting to show themselves for the Tennessee Titans right now. Now, for the number 1 team with the worst future in the entire NFL, we have the New Orleans Saints. Right now, they do not have a franchise quarterback on their roster. Andy Dalton, Jameis Winston. Dalton's actually played decently, and Taysom Hill has had some nice moments as well, but neither one of them can be considered a franchise-level quarterback right now. You may be able to bring him back because he is a free agent. Both Jameis and Andy Dalton are, but right now, if you're paying Andy Dalton big money, that's not a great sign for your team moving forward. I don't think that he is, one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL by any stretch of the imagination. At head coach, you have Dennis Allen. He is somebody that I don't think necessarily had a terrible culture, but I just don't think he's elevating the players around him. I had high hopes for the Saints team coming into the year, and I just don't think he's met those expectations so far. I do think you could improve on Dennis Allen. I also understand giving him another year. I don't think it's unpopular with Saints fans to say that Dennis Allen isn't a great head coach. So no head coach, no quarterback that you're really super excited about. They don't have cap space either. They have the worst cap space in the entire NFL for next season. They currently sit at negative $59.8 million. They're almost $60 million over the cap for next year. That's without a starting quarterback as well. they're just not in a good situation. We've always talked about the Saints as being a team that the cap is fake for them. But, you lose Terron Armstead last year. You've lost Trey Hendrickson before. They've lost some really good pieces. And I think that, things are finally catching up to them. They're not in that competitive window right now. And this is probably going to be the time that, the cap is really a problem for them. They also do not have their draft pick. They traded up for Trevor Penning last year. You gave up a first rounder this year for Trevor Penning, essentially. And I think that, that's not looking like a great trade right now. You're probably going to be giving the Eagles a top 10 to 12 pick. And you got Trevor Penning, who really hasn't played much this year, and I wasn't super high on anyway. And so that's just really frustrating because you've got no draft picks, you've got no cap space, you've got no quarterback, you don't really have a head coach that you believe in either. And this is not a team that, has superstars all over the board. Cam Jordan's getting older. Michael Thomas really can't stay healthy. It sounds like, they may move on from him this year. Obviously, you've got some good players in Marshawn Lattimore and Chris Olave. I really like Pete Werner, the linebacker. You've got some nice players kind of all across the board, but this is not a team that is talented enough to be really competitive and pushing for the playoffs, and they don't have a lot of means to getting better right now. And that's why they're the number one team for me when it comes to the worst future in the NFL. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to see the top 5 teams with the best futures in the NFL, please smash that like button down below. Hit that subscribe button as well so you don't miss anything. Do NFL draft content, all things predictions, rankings, player analysis, all of that good stuff. Please hit that subscribe button down below. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.